Well, hello there, YouTube. It's me, ThatFatBrony. And do you hear that? Why, that's the sound of my voice. You know how it truly sounds, not that muffled crap that you've been listening to for the past month. I hope you like what you hear. Anyway, today I'm going to read Let's See How Bad I Can Make This Fanfic by Troll, a fitting name. So let us begin. Chapter 1. It was a beautiful day in Equestria. The birds were singing and the clouds were nice and fluffy and big. The sky was a baby blue, and even the rabbits jumped happily around the field, singing and laughing and doing all the bunny things. Every pony was having a good time, until a gigantic rip in the space-time continuum caused a massive portal to open, and then all of a sudden a human fell out of it and landed into the land of Equestria. Note that we're disregarding the fact that everything in one world is completely drawn, and everything in the real world is not drawn. At first, the human wondered how he could have gotten there, and how the portal had opened, but he didn't care at all. The human looked around at all the ponies, and he said, "I must be in Equestria!" His life was about to become 20% cooler in 10 seconds flat. He wouldn't be forever alone anymore, and he did not take an arrow to the knee. Before doing anything, the human reflected on his shitty life filled with being bullied and how bad everything was and sucked. He was filled with angst. Then, all of a sudden, out of absolutely nowhere, the man became an alicorn. He had a fireball for a cutie mark and was jet black and blazing red hair. Twilight Sparkle came up to the alicorn and said, "Whoa, you look handsome and awesome. What's your name?" "Gary Stew," said the man-turned-alicorn. He looked deep into Twilight's eyes and used the power of self-desire to... Why is this making me laugh so much? He then looked deep into Twilight's eyes and used the power of self-desire to control Twilight to come over to him and start making out. It was awesome! I mean, he thought it was awesome. After the human and Twilight were done making out, they decided that it would be best to take it back to Twilight's place. So they did. But the alicorn didn't feel as though Twilight was awesome enough for him, so he went off to find Rainbow Dash. Once he had flown to Cloudsdale, he completely ate a pony and swallowed them whole. Yummy! Then he went to Rainbow Dash's door and knocked. Rainbow Dash answered. She had a rainbow mane and tail, and was sky blue. The alicorn broke her wings. Rainbow Dash was sad. This is ridiculous, and I love it. The alicorn decided that Rainbow Dash was awesome enough to ride on his back, so she hopped on, and he went off to find Fluttershy, the cutest pony ever. Once he had flown a good 50 yards, he decided it would be time to use his ultra-cool teleportation powers and teleported all the way to Fluttershy's cottage. He knocked on her door. Fluttershy answered it, and when she did, the alicorn grabbed her and gave her the biggest hug that was possible. Now that he had given Fluttershy a hug, it was now time to go find Pinkie Pie. He then proceeded to violently murder Fluttershy. How's that for illicitly hate? Aw. But I like Fluttershy. As do most bronies. Anyway, he didn't actually murder Fluttershy. Okay, just disregard what I just said. But he did tell Fluttershy that if she got any more adorable that he'd have to kill her, because her adorableness would compromise the safety of all known universes. The alicorn spread his awesomely black wings and took off once more. Once he had found Pinkie Pie, he looked at her long and hard. For some reason, she was now an anthropomorphic human pony with heaving breasts. She smiled and winked at me while saying, "I hate parties." For some reason, she was wearing underwear. The alicorn trotted up to Pinkie Pie and looked her straight in the eyes before saying, "If I was in the club, this would be so hot right now. But I'm not, so it's mildly disturbing and extremely unnerving to see you like this." Pinkie Pie looked back at the alicorn, and within a moment she transformed back into a pony form. She maintained the underwear and was now wearing socks. The alicorn examined her. "This is oddly sexual, and it slightly unnerves me. I'm going to leave now." So he did. This time, he decided to fly off to Celestia's place, to Celestia's palace. But not before stopping to take a massive dump on the statue of her. No, it was the most massive dump that Equestria had ever seen. Ridiculous. It also glowed and had the power to fuel an entire American state for 400 centuries. That's like 6 days. Princess Celestia was not pleased that there was another alicorn, so she threw bananas at him. The alicorn didn't care about the bananas, and instead launched a mega-powerful laser beam out of his horn at Celestia, turning her into a banana herself. He then picked up Banana Celestia and ate her. She was delicious, and had plenty of potassium for a healthy diet. Then I went back to Ponyville in search of Applejack, and when I found her, we went apple bucking together. The alicorn accidentally destroyed an entire tree by touching it with its hoof. Applejack thought that the alicorn was awesome, and made out with him just like Twilight did. What happened next is R-rated. R is for radical and raunchy and really hot. And restricted. After all that, the alicorn decided to visit Rarity, who is obviously best pony, and there may be no further disputes about this, for upon arriving at Rarity's house, the alicorn shot a small orb of magic into the multiverse, which exploded, forever labeling Rarity its best pony. Rarity then gained a small extra cutie mark on the inside of her thigh, which was the words, best pony. The alicorn, approaching best pony, spent the rest of his day showing Sweetie Belle the ropes of pleasuring a mare. Sweetie Belle couldn't stop looking as Rarity squealed in delight. After Rarity had thoroughly had the best massage of her fucking life, the alicorn made out with her and left, because Rarity deserved to be treated with at least some respect. She's a lady. Then the alicorn went all the way to Appaloosa, just so he could hear Braybird say, Appaloosa, in Pony. After that, he went to the Buffalo tribe and bro-hoofed the tribe master for being such a bro. Without any further hesitation, the alicorn teleported back to Ponyville and gathered up Fluttershy, Applejack, Rarity, Rainbow Dash, Twilight, and Pinkie Pie. Once he had them all in one place, he used his bulging muscles that had transferred to his pony form from his human form to rip open the universe. With a portal now open, he grabbed each of the ponies and jumped through the portal, landing on Earth as a human. Now all the ponies were with him, so he took them all back to his house where they lived together for the rest of eternity. And then Trixie came, and it was awesome. The man looked at a screen, and his story was featured, meaning that it was now 90 times more susceptible to hate due to the fact that other stories could be in its place. He laughed, yelling, "Success!" He sat back down in his chair and reveled in his glory. Little did the readers know that not only was his story a parody of a bad fanfiction, but also a parody of or trollfics that made it to the top of the popular list. No, seriously, how did this get here? Chapter 2. Meta of a parody of a parody of a parody. Do not take anything that is about to be said as a joke, or else you might have a sense of humor. Warning, this is not funny at all. At all. At all. Not one tiny bit. No comedy here. Seriously, there's none. Whatever. You chose to read it. Or in everyone else's case, you chose to listen to me read it. Gary Stu sat down in front of his computer. 2 days prior, he had submitted a fanfiction and parody of most other fanfiction, and it had somehow found its way into the feature box. He took a sip of his soda, reclining in his chair and staring at the screen. Sure enough, a trollfic, or parody of any kind finding its way to the feature box was going to elicit massive amounts of hate, sometimes even in the form of parody. Applejack trotted into the room and sat next to Gary, who continued to sit and stare at the computer screen. He scratched his head. Most of the people seemed to like it, but there was a large amount that didn't. He scrolled through the site, looking at the fanfiction and checking the blogs of some of his favorite authors, but to his surprise, there were mass criticism against the featured box and the exact story he had submitted. Blinking twice, Gary made sure that he was reading it right. And sure enough, there was no effort to make the attack indirect, but targeted him directly. Gary frowned. This is not what he wanted. Gary reflected on the past events that had led to this. One day, he had simply written a story, and the next day, he was just out having some fun, and coming back from his fun, he discovered all this hatred. It didn't make much sense to him. Applejack sat on Gary's lap as he stroked her mane, his self-desires being thoroughly fulfilled. Without another thought, he set his fingers on the keyboard and started to type, mainly because he was totally bored and didn't have much else to do. Here's what he wrote. "Lol, look at me, I want attention, please." And then he submitted it. Without another word, he got out of his chair and went to find Twilight, whom he had brought back from Equestria. Once found, he brought her back to his computer where she lay down and took a nap. Gary looked at his computer screen once more. Many times had he wondered why people were so adverse to authors getting attention for writing stories that parodied others. Sometimes a parody could be insightful, or maybe funny should the author not be too serious about it. Of course, these types of stories are gold mines for other authors. They just love complaining in a way that appeals to the people while at the same time contains all the disdain for the recognition of such trolling. Now I became the narrator of this story. But I'm still Gary, except I'm really not. And I decided to do a really long rant about all the shit that annoyed me, because no one else wants that. Anyway, let's move on with it, shall we? I really hate the troll genre, and I can't stand when the genre I write can't stand when the genre I write gets featured. But I write it anyway. Isn't that nice? Let's remember the only reason I ever started writing fanfiction was so that I would be recognized and praised enough so I could jack off to all the attention I was getting. Never once did I ever devote any amount of time to a fanfiction that would be forgotten, regardless of how popular it got. This includes MLD, FOE, cupcakes. I mean, be honest, 5 or 6 years from now, assuming you're out of the fandom by then, and if you're not, I'll give you another 5 or 6, so around 10 or 12, all around, you're going to forget all about any fanfiction and not care anymore. For fun, nope, just for attention. This actually might be getting a little complicated for you listeners. So, if you're not actually reading along with me by now, I recommend you do so. I assume this meta shit is hard to comprehend without reading along. Because without attention, remember now, if you're taking anything seriously, you're a twit. I am now just a lifeless shell of a human that withers away into the depths of the internet. That's why it's always smart, and never dumb, to parody other fanfiction, even if you're parodying a parody, or parodying a parody of a parody. Remember, never be subtle about which fic you're parodying. You want to make it clear what you're trying to parody. I use parody in a general sense because, besides the parentheses, there isn't any real parody here. Also, always remember that if you write a parody, you will always be hated by a group that does not agree with your parody, and or finds it dumb. Remember, if you ever write a parody about someone or something in particular, it might be a good idea to duck for cover, because people get really pissed really fast, even if you're just trying to make a point, or joke around, or maybe even trying to show the problems with parodies. And watch out, if whatever or whoever you're parodying ever finds it, you're practically dead because, assuming they found it, they're gonna rip into it. Usually, they'll be lighthearted about it, but you can tell. Remember to talk directly to the audience in a parody, or else it won't have the you had to be there comedic effect that is needed in every situation. When they're just sitting in front of the computer screen tapping the keyboard in hopes that somebody will share their view, which is exactly what this is doing, in a very poor fashion. Attention on an internet basically means the size of your penis is, that's why the above paragraph is such a block of text, so you'll skim over it and miss all the controversial stuff. God forbid I say anything that might offend or directly attack someone. Attention is everything. Why is there so much disdain towards everything that gets popular? Probably because anything that gets popular on the basis that is not godlike is not worth the popularity. Too bad videos like Charlie bit my finger and users like Ray William Johnson, the least funny thing on the internet, next to this fic, always criticize your own writing. It makes you seem humble. Are the most popular things on the internet. So, what exactly is the point of all this? Nothing. Nothing at all. The whole point is that the more point you try to make, the less you make. Why exactly? Because it's a dangerous world in the pony fanfiction land. Most of the time, the good writers and authors tend to band together and compliment each other on how well they deconstructed a parody. Well, it's not really that hard, considering it's a parody, so congratulations. If you want to try that, I suspect you succeed in about 4 minutes. Where's all this going? I don't know. But it's about to get ridiculously long and considerably boring, so buckle your seatbelt. We're about to take a magical ride into the land of meta, parody, and troll fanfiction that you have never experienced before because it will be done in the form of ponies. Without another word, I, Gary Stew, ripped open a portal to go back to Equestria, taking the ponies with me. I placed the ponies in the land of Ponyville and told them to start drawing paintings, and lots of them. Suddenly, patterns emerged. Twilight always included stars in her pictures. Rainbow Dash always included small lines that indicated fast movements. Rarity always made fine and acute lines, while Pinky always drew squiggles and nothing else. Fluttershy used very long, flowing lines that were very long. Gary nodded as he watched the ponies draw, and after a few hundred drawings each, he decided to take a piece of paper and incorporate all the qualities of each pony put into their own drawings and exaggerated them all. The final picture was a large star that was drawn with fine and acute lines, colored in extreme amounts of squiggles that didn't fill up all the space, and on the outside of the star was a ridiculously long, flowing line that circled around the poorly drawn star a couple times. There were small, straight lines around the entire star, indicating that it was moving quickly in every single direction possible. Gary smiled and looked at his creation, which clearly took the aspects of each pony, painting and exaggerated them to an extent where it would be quite obvious it had been done on purpose. Suddenly, Rainbow Dash broke out into an unbridled rage, and tore the piece of paper out of Gary's hand and ripped it to shreds. Gary frowned, and did not understand why Rainbow Dash was so angry, for she had no reason to think that Gary thought her art was bad. It was no matter. Gary had other plans anyway. Gary drew an exact replica of the drawing that had just been torn to shreds and displayed it at the Ponyville Open Art Show. Many of the ponies were familiar with the art styles of the main six. Note that I call them the main six because writing out Twilight, Sparkle, Rarity, Rainbow Dash, Fluttershy, Pinkie Pie, and Applejack is much too much work, and since there is no other name that is given to the 6 ponies in the show, I am forced to use the non-canon word / phrase, main six, for the purpose of making the job of me typing this a bit easier. And the ponies laughed at such playful teasing towards the ponies they knew so well. In fact, it got so much praise that it was publicly displayed in the Museum of Equestrian Art. Upon being placed in the museum, his art was critiqued by the finest pony artists. As a human, Gary was expected to draw with such stupidity. The artists hated the drawing, and although they were fully aware of the main six's quirks with arts, they did not think that such an atrocity belonged to the museum and threw hate in its direction. They did not understand how any pony, or even a human such as Gary, but he's an alicorn now, could be placed in a museum that was meant only for the most highly praised and quality art. They said that the painting was just bad art, and calling it a parody was simply a ploy by Gary to achieve the amount of praise and attention he was obviously fishing for. They called the painting bad art, just as John Cage called his song 433 music. In both instances, John Cage and Gary Stu, the critics went up in rage because they could not bear to see something that was so simple and stupid receive so much praise and recognition. So what is the point of writing a parody of a parody of a parody, anyway? What is the point of writing a parody of a parody? Is there really any point of pointing out the flaws and stupidity of something that is pointing out flaws and the stupidity in a fashion that the first one or one before it did, and in the process simply reuse some of the qualities contained in the parody? That the parody is parodying, or maybe even a parody of a parody, decides to parody using satire instead of parody, because contrary to belief, a parody is humorous or satirical imitation of a serious piece of literature or writing, while satire is the use of irony, sarcasm, ridicule, or the like, in exposing, denouncing, or deriding vice, folly, etc. And although the two can be considered synonyms, it is imperative to remember that a parody is like a play, and that uses the same characters of another play, tweaking their traits and exaggerating them, while satire is simply ridicule of a play, such as making another play for the purpose of pointing out that the original playwright was a complete moron, especially when they use run-on sentences as long as this one. Gary Stu knew that the difference between a trollfic and a parody was that a parody does not stray from the parent material. Gary decided to take a look at a trollfic and a parody in hopes that he would find conclusive proof to his suggestions. So within the parody he currently wrote, he wrote a parody of his own parody and paralleled it to a trollfic that he placed into the parody of a parody of the parody of what was probably another parody. Thus, he wrote this trollfic. So, one day in the magical land of Equestria, a man named Lolpoop decided he'd go and have lots of fun in Ponyville. Without even thinking about what he was doing, he jumped into the Magicla land and he entered it. And when he landed, he found a ponies by the name of Twilight Spurkled. Nad, he went up to her and she says, I know how to get to the bathroom from here. And then the man who came from the magical land called Eth, he says, Oakmay, show me how to get from this place to the bathroom, 'cause I haven't been to it in a long time. Nad, sometimes I'm really tired and I really need some sleep. And my blood is all is like all full and studs. I go to the potty in my pants and I unzip my zipper. And I shoot a massive stream of jizz out of it. And it all like unpronounceable word. And everyone all like unpronounceable word again. Look at all the jizz. And then everybody gets to cover in my jizz. And they all like, oh my god. I am has cover in jizz in this guy. And really, I don't mean to jizz, but it's just happening. And sometime I wonder if I would actually be shooting the urine out of my plaque underneath the zipper of my pantaloons. But then I say, nah, that's just stupid. And then I come here and meet you, Twilight. I meet a righty here, and you goes ahead and you tell me that all this time you knew how to get from here to the bathy room. And I is ever so grateful, Twilight. I is ever so grateful. Wow, this is hard to read now. And so, Twilight decides that she's a goon to take this pony that she found it on her dory step, and she taked it to him, and she said to him, I know that you want to go to the bathy room, but I has to say that you can't, and that is why I'm going to lock the door, and you can't go into it. And I will laugh, and you'll be all like, oh my god, it has nowhere to go to the bathy room. And that means, oh no, I'm a piss. I'm a piss in my pantsies. So then the pony is like, no, 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 on, no, 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 nom. I feel like I shouldn't be laughing this much. I'm sure the rest of you aren't laughing like this. But maybe you would be if you were doing a reading of your own. Just think about that. And then after he is done with that yelling and the hollering, he says, Twilight, why do you do this? This does this to me? And she said that she's actually Changeling Queen. What a twist. Holy shit. And then Twilight decided that she is done with being Twilight, and she turned it into the Changeling Queen. And then the Queen Chrysalis or something says to the pony, she says that you have been a very bad pony, and spanks him 74 times, and says that he's a very, very bad pony. And she kicked him in the donkey, and snid him off to the magical land of hell, where he meets Mr. Satan Pony, and Mr. Satan is all like, WTF, why are you the pony? He says, I am Pone, and Mr. Satan says, I'ma kill you. But that pony had not gone to the bathy room, and he says, oh no, and starts to feel something coming, and he says, watch out, Mr. Satan, it's out to get, Licious, and hither, and Satan is like, oh no, and then, before he can go anyway, else, the pony unleashes all the piss that he'd been saving up for over 20,000 years, and it go all over to Satan, and the Satan says, unpronounceable words, save me, I am drowning, flicker. And then he drowns in the piss, so the Mr. Nice Pony guy, who now has no more jizz. So he says to all the dead Stan, he says, you are dead. So now I'm to Stan, and I says that I is not dead, but I is alive, and not dead, but alive, and not dead. So it was not dead anymore. So he came back to the Ponyville, and trot up to the Chrysalis, and says, yeah, you ex the meanest pony ever. And then he kicked her into the face, and she was like, gargle. And then she says, You has me defeat me in this time, Pony, but I will be back, and when I comes to the back you will find out that not only have I this 20A stronger, but I also has this long neck. Bwahaha. And then she leaved it, and it was like, awesome, addin, lol, and ruffle, worthy because that pony name was the Scary Stew, and he das the most awesomest pony I has ever seen it. Gary Stew looked at the atrocity he had created and thought to himself, if he were to call that a parody of Trollfix, it wouldn't work at all, because whilst writing it, he had the direct intention of creating the most eye-bleedingly bad fic of all time. He then decided to write a parody of the parody he was already writing, located below. A pony named Sunflower Sunshine was writing a story. She decided that it would be a great idea to write a story that has no point other than seemingly be completely against parodies of parodies, which she was writing one herself. Wait, wasn't the story she was writing a parody of a parody of a parody that basically was against the thing it was? How ironic. What was the point? Was this story going to change anything? No, it wasn't. And Sunflower Sunshine knew that this was true. Writing a parody of a parody of a parody only meant that the parodier? Yes, I'm going to say parodier, is so unsure of his own parody that he must go to great lengths to find some sort of cause in his parody. Sometimes it didn't seem like any other points were being made at all, except for pointing out that one parody or the next was stupid and how no reasons. Obviously, Gary Stew ended the parody here because that would be appropriate. Suddenly it dawned on him that Trollfics weren't about random capitalization, but the use of incoherence and randomness. Thus, this fic. So, I looked ahead a little bit, and he totally just copy and pasted it again. So I'm not gonna read that again, cause I had so much trouble the first time. But if you really want, you can read it yourself. Or go back and listen to me read it again. But I'm not doing it again. No. So anyway, he realized it wasn't actually a troll fic at all. It was his own genre. Poop. Just like parody in the form of imitation was his own thing. Suddenly, something dawned on Gary. No matter how hard he tried, or what he did, there will always be someone trying to seek attention from attention. It was inevitable. Gary shook his head, and realized the only thing that mattered now was not giving a shit any longer. So he spent the rest of his day with the ponies. First he sewed a 7 onto an 8 with Rarity, and then he flew around with Dash, and he decided that it would be best if he stayed away from Twilight while she read because reading is boring as fuck, and something you shouldn't do. Haha, fucking irony. And then he decided to care for animals with Fluttershy and party with Pinkie Pie. After all that fun stuff, he came back and decided that maybe writing such a long and pointless parody of absolutely nothing that would do nothing but get more hate out of the hate he was already getting was a bad idea. But then he realized that he wasn't looking for praise or for attention, but just looking to get out of his main point. That sometimes, when you take pony fanfiction too seriously, you realize you and I are both wasting a lot of time complaining about something that doesn't really change anything. Also, at least a parody is a parody is a parody is of parodies, and that's just pointless. Because when you parody a parody, you're really parodying the fact that you're an idiot, because you can't parody a parody unless you poke direct fun at the fact that you're not gaining popularity and others are. And therefore, those that agree with you will make sure that you are agreed with, and suddenly nobody gives a shit anymore. There is no longer any point to parodies of meta fanfiction, because everything that can be said has been said. Besides, meta actually means a column or a post, or a group of columns or posts, placed at the end of a racetrack to mark the turning places, or pertaining to occupying 2 positions in the benzene ring that are separated by 1 carbon atom. Fanfiction can never be written for fun, only for attention. Number 1 rule. Thus, at the discovery of the first rule of fanfiction, Gary decided to make a list of rules that pertain to fanfiction. Number 1. Fanfiction can never be written just for fun, only for attention. Number 2. If your story is not perfect, it will be hated. Number 3. The more popular a story is, the more hated and overrated it will become. Number 4. If your story makes the featured box with a random tag, it does not deserve to be there. Number 5. Most sophisticated words will mean a higher quality story. Number 6. Never, ever, ever make an OC pony that is an alicorn. Number 7. As you gain more followers, your new stories will slowly lose their quality. Number 8. The more attention you receive, the more ridicule you will receive. Number 9. Comedy is never good unless the writing is good. Number 6. Stupidity cannot be comedy. I kind of disagree with that. It kind of can be. Sometimes. Not all the time. Anyway. Number 11. The more agreeable your fic is, the better it is. Number 12. Shipping is only good when it's caked with good writing and a plot. Number 13. Stories without cover pictures are to be shunned. Number 14. If a less serious piece of fanfiction receives praise, take it seriously. Number 15. Never hesitate to hate on popularity. Number 16. Always mask hate with lightheartedness. Number 17. Do everything you say you shouldn't do. Number 18. Never take pony fanfiction as a trivial matter. Number 19. Do what I do and blow everything out of proportion. Number 20. Do not leave constructive criticism when you downvote a story. Number 21. No matter what, you will always look for praise. And 22. Do not write meta. And thus, pleased with his work, Gary Stu pet Rainbow Dash who curled up on his lap. He was happy and decided to go back to Ponyville, where he would reflect on every bit or irony he just typed. Irony is the incorrect word. And there you have it, a meta story. Yeah, I found it pretty funny actually, which is why I laughed, as you heard. And you know, I kind of agree with those rules, some of them. Most of them, but not all. So, with my new microphone, I actually do plan to sing some MLP songs. You know, if I'm ever alone in this house. I'm sort of alone right now, but you know, I'd rather sing with absolutely no one around. So that'll take a while. But anyway, if you enjoyed this meta fanfiction, or my voice, or both, or everything, if you love me, comment, rate, subscribe, do all 3. And when you rate, be sure to give me a thumbs up and not a thumbs down. Yeah, that's what you should do, because you love me. Do you love me? I know you do. You love me. And enough of that. Bye.